a journalist, but I'm also a media critic. And as a researcher in media effects, and particularly in media innovation at the local level, I am very much in the forefront of not only creating new curriculum to help train you all to do your jobs better, but also to do your jobs in a way that protects you and your sources and others from the harms that can come from the work that we do. So this semester, and particularly in this class, I am going to be working with you to prepare you to be that next generation of communicators that can take on the kind of work and environment that we saw just last night here in our country. So I want to take a moment to just pause and talk about not only what we saw last night, but what I have seen as an educator, not only here at FAMU, but also in my research work of online harassment, and what I have seen not only in the past 4 years from this administration, but from the past 12 years, as we as a discipline and as a profession have built our product and our engagement in digital spaces, which have come very much under attack from the highest offices in the land. So here we sit today in this classroom discussing a topic that is so very relevant. What is the role of journalism in the United States in particular, in our democracy? What is the role of journalists vis-a-vis representing to their local audiences as well as to their national audiences what they see and what's happening? And what is our role and responsibility as journalists to provide accurate, well-resourced, well-verified information that doesn't add to the confusion and continue to sow misinformation and disinformation that leads to the kind of confusion, anarchy, and even violence that we saw happening yesterday on our screens. I've been up since early this morning and was online late last night as the President of the United States was first shuttered from Twitter, and then Facebook and Instagram followed with shuttering and silencing his accounts for videos and tweets that violated the terms of service of those platforms. And so we've seen over the past 4 years, the president used that platform somewhat as a bully pulpit in its more benign forms, but also as a tool for inciting violence, not only against our democracy and the legislators that were in that building and staff, but also against journalists and the police themselves who were responding. I don't know if you all have seen the news and watched as some of our journalism colleagues, physically, their equipment, and others have been destroyed as a result of what happened in the Capitol yesterday. What we saw was a horrific display of what has been the culmination of 4 years of violent rhetoric and dog whistles from the highest office in the land that has been reported in media outlets by journalists being used as tools to be able to further an authoritarian regime and agenda that led to an insurrection and coup attempt of our country's democracy. So I want to put a marker on today for you all because obviously because of the work that I do with Trollbusters in supporting journalists and being safe online against online attacks, I have seen this movie before, and I have seen this violence migrate from online spaces to offline spaces, especially as I shared with you in my own personal experiences, not only as dean, but as a journalist here in Florida years ago. And so I want to make sure that you all understand the weight of the responsibility that I am going to be bringing to this class to prepare you all to help be the force to hold democracy in this country. We are at a critical point here in the United States, and here right now before January 20th, where we're going to continue to see this kind of violence play out in various spaces. I don't know if any of you were here in Tallahassee yesterday, but there were protests here at the Capitol as well that were happening in spaces all around the country. Our responsibility as journalists is to not only help people understand what's happening, but also why it's happening. And our role and responsibility as journalists in being responsible stewards of those stories and in sharing that with the public. This morning, last night, I saw significant pushback from colleagues and others who were pushing back and challenging journalists to use the language of insurrection and coup and violence and rioters and thugs, the same language that is used against Black people as peaceful protesters in our nation's newspapers. And so even this morning, as the headlines were coming out in our printed newspapers across the country, I observed online the challenges from media critics like myself, who are continuing to call us out as journalists on how we do our work so that we don't continue to seed this type of confusion and misinformation and disinformation in the work that we do as journalists. So this class for me as an advanced class that is to help you all understand and be prepared to report in these types of environments. We will be talking about misinformation, disinformation, trust, engagement, and the relationship of the role of journalism vis-a-vis our democracy here in the United States, and the crisis point that we are at right now, not only in our democracy, but in journalism itself. Just today, from 1 o'clock until 2 o'clock before this call, the Knight Foundation in Miami, Florida, who funds our programs at the school, some of our programs at the School of Journalism and Graphic Communications, had an online program specifically speaking to online news, local news, and what happened in the events of yesterday leading up to today. My concern is that we as journalists need to understand that the past 4 years we've been played, that the president and those who he has enabled, as well as those who are enabling him, know how to use these digital tools and use these platforms to discredit the work of journalists, to destroy the brand and reputation and trust in news and journalism as the fourth estate holding to and holding power to account, which, as if you have been watching the past 5 years, even before that, we have seen journalism and journalists, broadcast, print, and otherwise, wrestle with not only how to handle the president and his role, but how to characterize the complete different reality that people of color have in the United States vis-a-vis the rest of the population, right? My goal is for this class to prepare you all to be able to speak truth to power. I also have been doing research through this political season on political journalists as well as the online spaces. And so I speak with deep knowledge, as I said, of what has been going on in these online spaces. We as journalists, and especially journalists of color, have come under attack in our own newsrooms for being journalists of color on the front lines trying to tell the stories of Black Lives Matter, of the pandemic, of the president and his rhetoric, and the violence that we now see in our streets. And so we have to do our work differently and understand that in today's world, we can't do things the way we used to 20 years ago. We can't do things the way we used to when some of my colleagues were even in the newsroom in the past. This is a completely different world, and what we see as a result is violence in the streets. So we have to be much more sophisticated in how we use these tools, how we use our language and our visuals, which are the key tools that we have as communicators, to be able to get the messaging across and be successful in helping residents navigate life here in the United States and around the world. So with that, I want to close with opening up for a few questions. See if you have any questions regarding the syllabus, the course, what we're going to be about for this semester, and see if there are any other questions or concerns that I can answer for you today before you make that decision to persist in the course for the semester. If you could please use either the chat or the hand raising function under reactions, which is at the bottom of your navigation screen in Zoom, to raise your hand and I'll call on you. You can unmute yourself and ask questions, or you can use the chat and type your questions into the chat there if you have any additional questions.
I have a question. Well, it's more of a, well, never mind. I just wanted to make sure that you said that like this will be remote learning, correct?
For the most part. And so all of the materials, as I said, that homepage is going to be your portal to access some of the readings that are outside of the textbook. It will also be your access to quote unquote lecture materials that may be delivered either via video, audio, or some other means. And we will also be using this classroom environment and synchronous meeting time like this to do some debriefing on what's happening on the day, as well as to look deeply at the kinds of story forms that we're looking at and examine them together and do the peer editing and peer debriefing that will help us learn from each other and the work that we're doing. So at least for the beginning of the semester, we will be meeting synchronously at our timeline on Zoom. And I will be very clear in the course syllabus when we will not be meeting online. We will not be meeting in Zoom, and that your expectation is that you will move through the materials that are linked there and complete the assignments for that week. So I will definitely give you a heads up when we get to that point, as well as make it very clear in the course schedule itself when we're not meeting in Zoom. So the expectation is on that we would be meeting unless you get an announcement or something in the course schedule to the opposite. Okay.
Okay, thank you. And there is a question in the chat.
Great. Are we only meeting once? I see this class on my schedule twice. We meet twice a week. Okay, so Mondays and Wednesdays from 2 until 3:15. I had to check.
You mean Tuesdays and Thursdays?
I'm sorry, we are on Tuesday and Thursday. We meet Tuesdays and Thursdays from 2 until 3:15. So those are the 2 days of week that we'll be meeting. And as I said, synchronously on Zoom for the next couple of weeks until you're provided with notice. Okay. So any other questions about kind of the format or the flow of the course or the material that I presented? Because I want to just open up the end of here to ask a bit of each of you about your expectations. So the question I have for you and the prompt to close out is for us to, since this is reporting and writing too, sorry, I see there's a question in the chat. Will we be doing more than writing articles? For example, learning about media packages, etc. So my understanding of what is supposed to be taught in this course, the student learning objectives. If you look to the Florida course numbering system and the course system that's used by all Florida schools to determine what courses are taught, as well as the equivalencies, this particular course is supposed to be focused on news writing. And so the goal in it is not necessarily to touch on broadcast and broadcast packages. That is supposed to be covered more deeply in our broadcast sequence and courses. However, if you look on the course schedule, I've deepened our knowledge of two things. One, our writing skills. And so we will be bringing quote unquote multimedia skills to that writing effort. And so that may include some video work, some other work, etc. So I might not be talking about broadcast packages per se, but you will be producing multimedia work. Secondly, we will be deepening our understanding of the digital production of that work. And so some of the work that you'll be doing at the end of the semester, you will be publishing in some kind of forum online and making that work public in that way. And so that's where we're going to deepen our work. The other piece of what we will be doing in the second half of the semester from the Advancing the Story textbook, which is our textbook for this class, is using some materials that specifically dive into investigative journalism and specifically using numbers and data to be able to analyze and develop stories. So we will be deepening our investigative skills, specifically our digital and numerical skills in this course. So by the end of the semester, you will have at least 5 clips, hopefully many of them published, that you will be able to include in your portfolios for the end of your academic career. Okay. Any other questions about expectations about what you expected to see in the course or thinking might be in the course so that we can talk about it? Because we do have some flexibility, and I've designed the course, as I said, in that second half to be much more of a coaching model where we are in a production mode and developing content for production. And so there's an opportunity for us to look at maybe changing some of the formats if you'd like to produce something in a different way. Okay.
I have a question. Okay, since this is news writing and reporting, and you said like production and stuff, will we be like writing like prompts or something for news, like when, like, you know, what they read?
No, so what we'll be doing is primarily deepening in this course your story formats and your writing tools and your reporting tools. And so it is focused primarily on writing and reporting. But I guess, as I mentioned, there will be some video components that could be included in those multimedia assignments. And that can be video, it may be other tools, such as timelines, slideshows, and other kinds of devices that we'll talk about when we deepen into the digital production and digital storytelling. So the way the Advancing the Story textbook flows, if you haven't taken a look at it yet, is that it dives into kind of the different forms, print, digital, broadcast, and looks at story forms, production, and dissemination. And so we're going to be taking the first 2 chunks of that focus specifically on quote unquote news and print, as well as digital production, and focusing our attention on that.
Okay.
Okay. Anyone else? Questions, concerns, ideas for what you would like to see at the end of the semester? Let me ask a question. Show of hands. So if you could use the reaction button, how many of you already have digital portfolios of your work? Okay. Yes, I've got a hand raised and a thumb. So yes, if you have a portfolio, put your thumb up. If you have a question, put your hand up and raise your hand. Okay. So one of the things that we may be able to do, and what I've tried to slate into the end of the semester, you'll see in the course syllabus, there's some weeks that just kind of say production weeks. There is a period in there where I introduce some content management systems and help you understand the ways in which you might put together a portfolio for your final portfolio review, and help you get this material into a format and ready and prepared for capstone, which requires that you have a portfolio like this that demonstrates the work that you've put together throughout your academic career. So there'll be an opportunity in the end of the semester, as we're working and polishing these pieces, to publish them and promote them on your own personal digital website. Okay. Any other questions, concerns? Mostly young ladies, I think. All right, everyone, then. If there are no further questions, I will be looking for your syllabus sign-in sheets by Friday. Like I said, please take a look at the syllabus. If you have any questions, email me or set some time in Calendly. My next open meeting time is Monday from 1 to 2 p.m. So you'll be able to talk to me before the next class period, as well as before drop ad, if you have some specific questions for you. But otherwise, it is still a very tenuous time here in the United States. And I'm going to be monitoring, as well as you should be, various media outlets, especially at this time. And I would ask you from now until we meet again next Tuesday to really step back from your role as communicators and watch and observe what's happening in the messaging. This morning, as I said, I saw lots of critiques of headlines, pictures that were used, how the rioters were described, critiques of how the police operated, etc. I'm not necessarily concerned about what the president did or didn't do, or what the National Guard did or didn't do. I want us to examine how did we perform as communicators in helping the public understand what was happening? Why did The Guardian and foreign journalists do a better job of covering what's happening in our own country than our reporters did, in calling out the kind of horrific behavior that we as a country have gone into other countries to protest their elections, see happening in our very own? So we have got to tend to our own business of what we do as communicators moving forward. This is going to be a case study in how to and how not to inform the public. So watch very closely over the next 2 weeks as we lead up to January 20th. And we will be talking about all the ways, what worked, what didn't work. This is really a period of experimentation as the journalists have tried to figure out, how do I stay safe and still tell the stories that need to be told? How do I get those stories? How do I do it if I'm not physically on the scene? How can I do it remotely and not put myself at risk? How can I keep my sources safe from secondary harms from the work that I do? I think you can see I'm very serious about the work that I do. And as I said, we will be breaking the knob off of this one this semester as we work to change systems all over to ensure that we can have and maintain a democracy here in the US. So with that, if there are no further questions, I'm gonna go pop off and do some of the other work that needs to be done. And I will see you all on Tuesday of next week. Take care and stay safe, and I'll see you soon.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.